Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Today is a big milestone for us, our 500th episode. Pete and I will discuss some of the things we've observed getting here and some of the things we want to do going forward. We're also going to hear from some of our past guests who chime in with their thoughts. We're both so grateful to you for coming with us on this journey, and we hope to keep you constantly informed and entertained for at least 500 more. Your listenership has allowed us to meet some of the people we've admired for years, explore the topics we've always been curious to unpack, and go deep with some of these people to the point where we've cultivated some real, meaningful friendships. For that, you have our eternal gratitude. You also have our pledge to go harder, to keep getting great guests, and to continually hone this craft for your enjoyment and ours. And since I'm doing this intro, I get to tell Pete how grateful I am for all of his hard work. When he initially said we should publish 4 shows a week, I thought he was bananas. He is bananas. It's not easy. But as our professional trajectories have some differences, he does most of the heavy lifting, and I just get to go to Stewart Copeland's house, or eat fried chicken with Sly Stone, or fish tacos with Fran Strine, or Eggs Benedict with Mark Schulman, or stroll through Old Sacramento with Jim and Deborah DeFelice, and ask every one of them about the inside details of their work and their fascinating lives. Pete, I love you, my brother. I'm very happy to share and enhance the qualities we have in common and to bring to the world this perspective and this candor in our search for all the enlightenment we've found from our friends here. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Number 500. Here we go.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stewart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
There are so many great friends of the show who have become just great friends. I'm talking about Mark, Charlie, Leah, Tishy, Greg, Jake, Tommy, Ricky, Jeff, Gina, Michelle. Too many to name, and I know I've overlooked someone whose forgiveness I must now beg. It's like when Ben Affleck and Matt Damon forgot to thank Kevin Smith when they won the Oscar. But what I'm trying to say is one of our absolute captains is Brian Theis, who came to us as a listener, who just happened to be a neighbor, and now we're proud to call him a homeboy and have him on the team. He's written a companion blog entry, and we'd love for you to read it because he says nice things about us, and oh so eloquently. There's a link in the show notes. We really appreciate you, Brian. Our guest for episode number 1. He's been a guest several times since. When our show was a baby, he was the doctor in the delivery room. Here's James Early. With me today in a donut shop in Vallejo, California.
The last place that I need to be at, actually.
You and me both, brother.
I'm happy to be here nonetheless.
We are celebrating posting of our 500th episode. This is for our 500th episode. We could not ever celebrate a milestone like this one without comments from the catalyst of this whole thing, which we are celebrating. Our guest number 1.
Yeah.
The very first episode. As I tell it, we started this podcast with your encouragement. And when we said, let's do the podcast, our condition was we will only do it, James, if you will be our first guest for episode number 1. And you said, of course.
Happy to be here, man.
Did you have any notion that these two knuckleheads would make it 500 episodes?
I didn't, to be honest with you, I wasn't sure if you were going to make it 5 episodes. I didn't know, even though I believe in you. No, it's difficult. It's a difficult undertaking, what you're doing, and I'm proud of you both. Both of you are more than capable. So to be honest with you, I'm actually not surprised.
Okay.
Because I saw it. I guess that was my gift of foresight. I saw that you should be doing this, and you're great at it. So there was no reason why you shouldn't do it, you know. Yeah. And look at you now.
Well,
I'm waiting for the TV show with the camera and all of that. I want to see that version of the show as well, where you're interviewing people and it's all being archived on video as well.
You know, we'd probably get much closer to that milestone if my fat ass wasn't sitting in a donut shop, for one. But yeah, I think we are headed in that direction for sure. And I think that we are headed in a direction where we're branching out content-wise. If I say, now you gave us some guidance as to what we should do, and I'm not sure whether, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you certainly encouraged the direction of the show. And when we sat down to do our first episode, we didn't have a format or anything. We just hit the record button. Mm-hmm. But we sort of used the format, maybe subconsciously, and we continued on with the way that we just had a conversation that started with a little piece of history and then continued on through a little piece of philosophy, followed by a little piece of looking down the road. And I think that's what we did with you in episode 1. That's kind of what you handed to us. And then by way of influence, the 499 episodes we've seen since have been pretty much that loose formatting conversation. If we were to do episode 1 over again, would you do anything differently? Do you think that format has some improving? What do you think?
Honestly, I wouldn't, because I think it's brilliant of you, but at the same time, it's just kind of who you are and how you are and your execution of conversation. You're a great conversationalist, and you're one of those people, and Pete as well, that you guys have that gift of being able to just talk to people. Even if it is an interview, you forget that you're in an interview. You're just talking and hanging out.
Well, we forget too, because it was, every time I talk with you, naturally we have tons of conversations and we have lots to talk about always. And whenever we're in conversation, a couple of things happen to me. Number one, I open my mind because, your experience lends itself to my learning something every time I'm sitting across from you, to mining nuggets of wisdom that most people, yourself and everybody else who's had some kind of level of accomplishment included, there's a nugget of wisdom that just comes out, and sometimes you don't realize you're putting it out there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of my job to mine it and unpack it.
Sure.
And the way that Pete and I get there is because we really want to know.
Yeah.
I think you probably recall when we first met that there was an instant, curiosity because your reputation preceded you. We had mutual friends, which helps a lot as well because, you get a little bit of context and you get a little bit of comfort. But I think that the genuine curiosity carries through to our audience too, because typically when we engage with folks who listen to us, they are just as curious about the folks we're talking with.
Well, again, going back, like you said, you have this charisma. Even like you said, when we first met, you got me in trouble in my martial arts class. Even though you're my instructor, one of my instructors, they were looking at us both like, what are you guys doing? Because it's so easy to talk to you and you forget where you are. You're just like, I don't care what I'm doing right now.
We're supposed to be working on forms and I'm asking you questions about the bass.
Right.
And it looks like you're goofing off.
Yeah.
And one of the other instructors is like, hey, you guys doing over there?
What are you doing? Yeah.
we were both in trouble. It's probably my brother.
We're trying to run a classroom here.
I'm always in trouble with my brother.
But so easy to talk to. And it's funny because there's been plenty of times where we have talked and you were just like, we should be recording this conversation.
Yeah.
Why don't we stop now and find a tape recorder somewhere? It's just always a general sense of wisdom from you and charisma in your conversation. So it's just easy to talk. And it was a no-brainer. And I think Jacques and I both, my younger brother Jacques, he was probably the first person that said, that John should have a show. I don't care what John is doing in life. He should have a show because he recognized your abilities early on, I think.
That's very interesting. He's got a very particular intuition for sure.
Yeah.
But when because I knew you by reputation first, and we probably had our paths cross at some point, but I actually met and got to know Jacques first.
Right.
And he and I bonded over the fact that we were, I was his instructor, but what I identified with in Jacques was that he's a grown man. Mm-hmm. And we had a bunch of teenagers in our class. So whenever guys would do something, it's a lot easier for teenagers to commit things to muscle memory, and they're a lot more limber.
Sure.
And so Jacques, I would spend extra time with because I was like, man, I really can relate to his ability to, learn something in his mind, but have that gap between your mind and your muscle memory.
Oh, yeah.
And, he was always strong and attentive. But I could see, like, if he was struggling with something just because physically, man, I can't get my leg up that high either. So I'm going to go work with Jacques so we can, get through this obstacle, whatever it is. So we got the chance to spend time that way. And the fact that he had any notion that I ought to have a show is a great compliment because he's a thinker.
Yeah.
And then when you and I met, naturally, I was like, wait a minute. This is probably something our listeners have heard many times, but the way that it happened was that if you were a musician and you grew up in Vallejo, you knew James Early by reputation for sure. In everybody of my generation, we knew you to be the baddest bass player in Vallejo. Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. We knew Charles Quinn to be the baddest bass player in Vallejo, but we knew you to be more of a generalist. Like you could get a song out of a person, whereas just in raw chops, Charleston Quinn has always been the bass king of our generation. However, if you had a talent and you wanted to get a song out of you, the guy you saw was James Early. And so again, I met Jacques and I knew he was Jacques Early. And then he began bringing you to class. And I think it was 3 or 4 classes in that I went, wait a minute. His name is Jacques Early, and his brother's name is James. That makes that guy James Early. And I don't know if I said that to you the first time that I walked up and kind of put 2 and 2 together, but that's what happened in my mind.
I'm pretty sure you did, actually. You do wear your heart on your sleeve, and if you're thinking something, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you said that. Yeah.
And then you said, of course, I said, man, I know who you are. And you said, well, I know who you are too. Like, we're in this class. We've been in this class for a few weeks now. We know each other. Yeah. And I was like, no, seriously, I know you. And you said, I know you too.
Yeah.
And then when I said, whatever I said in the form of, I think you're James Early and I know who James Early is, you said, yeah, but I know your cousins.
Yeah.
And so you really did know who I was, because of our mutual acquaintances. But anyway. Let's look forward. So
let me just interrupt and say it's still funny to me even now. One of my best friends is your much older cousin, Daryl Carbolito, and I would be at his house.
4 months older than me. No,
well, he's still your big cousin.
Yeah,
and so I'm at his house. Even now, I go to his house, because we fellow musicians and we do different things. And he's got, several pictures of you as a kid. And it's just, that's funny to me to see.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. I think it's beautiful. It's just, it's like, I know you like this.
Yeah.
But he's got pictures of you where,
as a youngster.
You look like you were 15 in every way.
Well, the funny thing about that is that, Daryl has been not only I only met Daryl when I think I was probably about maybe 18 years old when I met Daryl.
Okay.
Because, well, that's not true. We met each other when we were kids, but we lived in different edges of California.
Sure,
so,
yeah. And if you don't have a car when you're a kid,
right,
you rarely see each other.
Yeah. And Daryl and I have the benefit of, I have 77 first cousins, and Daryl's not even my first cousin. I think we're like third cousins. So, but he's absolutely one of my closest cousins, because once we did meet, we went, oh, there you are, and then we were inseparable pretty immediately.
Right. And then the musical connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had a bond from that.
So we had the familial bond and the musical bond, which, I would say if I had to size up my cousins, he's in the top 4,
sure,
top 3, however many. I mean, he's in the elite. I got a lot of cousins. I also haven't seen in many years, and a lot of cousins I could run into in the donut shop and not even realize. Except that I probably would say, well, that guy looks like he could be my cousin. But Daryl and I are unmistakable.
Sure.
And when we met, like I said, we had a musical connection that made us not only cousins, but friends.
Sure.
And he's been on the show several times as well. Have we ever done an episode together, you, me, and Darryl?
No, and we should.
That's terrible.
I know.
How have we gotten? How's that happened?
Because we're all busy men.
We're
That's
all
why,
busy.
You know.
So we'll make that happen.
Yes.
No, Pete and I both, we didn't plan necessarily to get to 500 episodes. We were just like you. We're going to try this out, see how it goes. Now that we're at 500, we're positive that we're going to trudge on through 1,000. So, where do you think we should explore between 500 and 1,000? What do you think we should be looking for? Who do you think we should be going after? Are we missing anybody?
Well, I mean, you know, there's always just the local talent that you could talk to. There's actually a few people I'm going to talk to you about. I mean, you've got the Escovedos, which I think are huge in anyone's world, and you've interviewed them, which I'm happy about. All of them, right?
No.
Sheila?
No. Not yet.
What about
We'll
Pete,
get there.
Pete
We have
Senior?
yet to get to Pops. I mean, I remember the last time you and I were driving together, he called me and he said, "Hey man, I'm just checking in with you. Yes, we're going to do the show." And I got happy about that, but we just haven't, you know, he lives in LA. We haven't yet to schedule it.
Well, there you go.
We'll get there though.
I feel like just on that note, then you make sure you interview Pops and Sheila.
Yeah.
For sure.
We got to do that, and we got to do that soon.
What about Michael Cooper? Have you interviewed him?
We're going to get Michael Cooper on the 16th of July.
Good. He would be a great interview.
Oh man.
You know, Michael, I have to give him propers. He's a mentor and a friend. You know, I still play bass. I actually play bass with Confunction, even though they have a bass player, Eric Young. Every now and again,
He's
Eric's
also been on the show.
Yeah. Oh, great. And Eric's busy and he's fantastic and he's kind of doing his own thing too.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. So every now and again, there'll be a show that he can't do and Confunction will call me and say, "Hey, we need you to sit in with us," which I'm happy to do. I'm just like, wow.
I bet.
And, but being around those guys, which I've been most of my life, to be honest with you, I've learned so much. I think we've talked about what I've learned from Felton Pilot, but Michael Cooper, he's a different gem. He's got this industry knowledge and he's probably one of the best technical people that I've seen at a live show. And when I say that, what I'm saying is that the way he runs his stage is so technical and precise. It's beautiful to witness, actually.
Yeah.
Because I know so many, I play in bands all the time.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody run their stage in a military fashion without being military.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he just has an order in a good way.
With precision.
With precision and being specific about sounds and frequencies, just setting up people don't know, but behind the scenes, you know, and when you do a concert, there's always, okay, I'm in the audience and I'm just jamming to this. This is great. But there's two different environments. There's the stage environment and then there's the audience environment.
The live room environment.
The live room. Well, you're out there and you're out, even if it's a stadium or an arena, you're out there and that's cool. It's coming out the big speakers and it sounds great, hopefully. But the band can't really do what they do unless it sounds also great on the stage.
Yeah. And that's a whole different system.
And very specific. You know what I mean? Like the lead singer has to hear this and that and a little bit more of this and that. So anyway, you know, Cooper spends probably about 2 hours at sound checks. Most bands, I'm telling you, if you're lucky, it's like 10 or 15 minutes.
Right.
It's just a rush. Okay, let's go. Let's get ready to play. Cooper's like, no, we're going to sit here for about 2 hours and get this sound right.
Dial it in.
And it's not a rehearsal.
I appreciate him.
He's just checking everything because he has to have it a certain way for him to do his thing. And I love it because his ears, he doesn't miss anything. You know, I need the keyboard up this much and he starts shouting out frequencies too, you know.
Can you roll off 300? Can you take in? Yeah.
Do all of that.
He's amazing.
And he doesn't miss it and he doesn't bite his tongue. And so I really appreciate that because for me, it's like going to school.
Yeah.
It's something you can't learn in college.
Well, I mean, how many live shows has he done?
We're talking about 500 shows here.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably done thousands of shows.
Clearly.
You know.
And so, yes, he knows what he's after nowadays.
Certainly just this year, he's going to do hundreds of shows. And in his career, it's been amazing. So anyway, he would be a good interview. And it sounds like he's going to be for you.
Let me tell you my Michael Cooper story because it's a good one. We went up to see 5.0, my favorite party band.
All right. Recently. Yeah.
Yeah. and we went to Cache Creek to see them close out that room up there. I can't remember the name of that room.
That was at your wife's birthday celebration.
It was my wife's birthday celebration. So we were out on the casino floor because the show was not going to start for another couple hours. And I was with Dave Agent.
Okay.
And we were just shooting the breeze. And Daryl.
That's right.
My wife and a bunch of our friends. We were, just enjoying a couple of drinks. And Dave Agent says, "Is that Coop?" And he looks over and there's some guy standing over there getting, doing whatever. And he calls out to him, "Michael." He turns over and he looks, and then they recognize each other. And I said, "Oh, that's Michael Cooper." These are the things that happen to you when you hang out with Dave Agent. So he comes over and I go over and I meet him. And, Daryl, of course, has met him. They went on the road. He went on the road with Confunction as a keyboard tech years ago. He and Dave are reminiscing. Dave Agent, many times guest of the Break It Down show, and renowned bass player, played on all of the Michael Cooper solo albums in one form or another. I'm enjoying this introduction, and he says, "Well, what are you guys doing here?" Because he could see that we were packed up. We said, "We're here to see 5.0. It's Cornell Carter's band. Richie's here." And, of course, he knew the whole band. But then Rich walked up. Rich Uggan, my favorite drummer. I've declared that. And we're all standing there enjoying Michael Cooper's presence. But I said, "Yes, that's it. That's a picture from that very event." When he said, "Oh, so you guys are here to watch the band?" "Yes, we are, and we're celebrating my wife's birthday." And then so I waved at Christy and I summoned her over so she could meet Michael. And Michael took both of her hands in the middle of the casino floor and started singing Happy Birthday. And of course, we all joined in. I don't know what it was, but when Michael Cooper sings, he makes everybody around him a better singer. Because we busted into a 4-part harmony for Happy Birthday.
Oh, wow.
And I have never seen an impromptu, just an impromptu vocal.
Boys to Men would have been jealous.
That fact, just that, spontaneously.
Sure.
But my wife got a special treat in that she just went to a casino to go watch a band, and suddenly Michael Cooper is singing Happy Birthday to her.
Wow.
And it was a magical moment. So
yeah, he's got, speaking of charisma, he's got it all.
Yeah, he really does. Michael Cooper is great, but we are also going to continue to go after artists, musicians, writers, performers.
Yeah. I definitely have a list of people I want you to talk to, including this kid. I'm doing a show today, tribute to James Brown. Well, it's a James Brown tribute, but it's a very special and unique one. It tells a story as opposed to just the songs. It doesn't bore you, though, with dialogue. As a matter of fact, it excites you and just gives you a timeline of what James did in the early part of his career. But the young man, his name is Dedrick Weathersby. And so I want you to look him up. I'll make it happen. We'll, work it out. But he's somebody you want to talk to. He's 28 years old. He's an old soul, but he's only 28. And he's really channeling James Brown. It's impressive. And I can't say that he's a singer even like James was, but he's such a great actor and entertainer and a fantastic dancer, actually. So he's got the splits and all that stuff. He can drop down and do all the James Brown leg work that you would imagine. Wow. So he's got him down. Okay. And to be honest with you, he is a good singer. And so, he's able to pull it off,
Very interesting. So you guys are playing tonight. You'll be back in the area in Martinez in a couple weeks.
Yes. And you'll be my guest then. And it'll be great. But you definitely want to talk to him.
Please.
He's like the next big thing. I've just joined the show, and he had a bunch of dates around California. And just since I've been with the show, which has only been a few weeks, he's called me almost every day telling me about shows being added in LA, New York. And then now they're talking about Europe.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's already green lit.
Well, let's do this, man. I can't thank you enough for christening our journey. Like I said, we are underway, and we have set sail through 500 episodes, but we got 500 plus more in us. And we will profile you again, as well as mine your thoughts for, who should be on the show
Well, yeah, congratulations to you and Pete on job well done. I think we're all impressed and excited to see where you guys are going to take this thing. But certainly impressed and proud of where you've already brought it to this lovely point. You know what I mean? So, kudos. Keep it up.
Thank you. James Early, everybody. Here are some comments from a pillar of the Bay Area music community and every other community he makes himself a part of. He's a multiple times returning guest and our dear friend, Dave Agent.
John and Pete are intuitive, intriguing, and bold in their own individual interviewing styles. As an early grade school student, I was always drawn to biography and geography, which inadvertently showed me a history of the world from the perspective of that particular publisher. The Break It Down show has built on those same curiosities with a wide range of subjects across a broad range of guests, showing their listeners perspectives of interesting people that I have yet to find anywhere else. The show is intriguing, bold, and intuitive. John and Pete, the insight you give your audience is invaluable. Stay on the cutting edge of technology and innovation that's springing up all around you. Here's to the first 500, and may you have 500,000 more. Peace.
Next up, perhaps the most prolific author in New Zealand right now, at least the leader in that category among Break It Down show alums, our friend Kat Connor.
Hey, Kat, we're celebrating 500 episodes on the Break It Down show. What does that mean to you?
To me, that's 500 episodes of joy. That's me being able to tap into all that information anytime I want. Phenomenal. It is phenomenal.
When I think about you writing books, you've got so many, of your Bite series books. What is there, 12 of them now? Is that right?
10 are out. The 11th one goes to editing on Monday.
Oh, wow.
Woo-hoo.
That's a big deal.
And I'm writing number 12, which is exciting. It is,
A book has 60,000 to 100,000 words in it. And every podcast is similar to being, you take 6 hours of conversation. That's the better part, if not a whole book.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, my books, as you know, how long they take to listen to because the Blind Foundation recorded 4. Yeah. And Terabyte is 12 hours.
That's crazy.
Of beautifully acted. But it's a lot, and if you're producing this all the time, and you pump those episodes out, I'm amazed you have time to actually eat, never mind do anything else.
Well, I snuck a bite in right here before we recorded, and I've actually got someone else on the line waiting to record another segment for another show, a completely different show that I produce.
So you're just amazing. You amaze me. I have days when I can't be bothered, and I just go, hey, I'll just go listen to a podcast. There's Pete, and he is nailing it every single time. And I'm like, how do you do it?
What episodes stand out for you?
Well, I enjoyed the Longmire one.
Yeah, the Longmire ones are cool.
That was a biggie. Yeah, that was real cool. I was thinking about that the other day, actually. And I listen to one a day, pretty much. So I think I'm catching up.
Nice.
And standouts for me, apart from the Longmire one, anytime you talk to anyone military about what they're doing now.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
I love those. They're just so inspiring. It's here these guys are.
Yeah, we have some really good ones coming up that are going to be along those lines, too. Quite a bit of that stuff coming. So I'm glad that you enjoy. Sometimes I work in a vacuum, and I don't really know. So it's hard to tell, but you're enjoying them. That's good.
And I get a lot out of them. And, I'm a writer. I'm always looking for a good character or something to add. I find so much in your stuff. I really do.
I should say for the audience, those that don't know, and they can't tell by your accent, you live down in New Zealand and you run a bookstore. Yep. You write books. This is your profession. What I love about what we do here is that our stories here at the Break It Down show are also your stories all the way around the other side of the planet. I mean, you're in a totally different day than me.
It's Friday. Woo!
It's Thursday here, Friday there. And yet these stories, they connect on a human way. I just love hearing that. We help you with your muse and feed some of your creative spirit. Because as you know, we love creating on this show.
Well, you do. And you're my go-to. So I get writers coming in talking to me all the time going, I'm struggling with this, or I can't work this out. And I'm like, have you heard Break It Down show? Here's a link.
Oh my gosh.
Go listen, because this podcast will help. There's things that you need to know.
Man.
And it's fantastic. And they're like, oh, didn't even know.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, that's
You're
fantastic.
in all my notes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure my classes I teach get tired of me, and I'm going, have you heard Pete? Hey, you had a question about cryptocurrency? Yeah. This is the podcast you need to hear. Go listen to this. Go listen to that. And like, I've got vets coming in too, because we're a military town, as you know.
Up ahead.
We've got Trentham military camp just down the road. I live right by it. And there's a lot of old soldiers, not that old, some of them. They come in because we have a vast military section, as we would. And I always point them to the podcast. I go, hey.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and giving me a few minutes of your time. I don't want to take too much. I know you got a business to run and some bookcases to smash your leg into, but I just think the world of you, Kat, and I love that we get to share these moments.
I love talking to you. Like, you're one of my favorite people in the whole world. Just
come on.
You make me smile. You make me
That's so
smile
sweet.
every time.
Well, likewise. I don't know if you can see, but I've got a big dumb grin on my face because I love me some
I can,
Kat.
actually. How cool is that?
Okay, well, thank you so much, and thanks for being part of our celebration. Let's think of some more shows that you want to co-host on, because that's fun.
Oh, yeah. That'd be fun. Thank you for having me, and keep it up, because I'm looking forward to the next 500.
Me too.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Because I'm looking forward to the next 500.
Me too.
The Petes, as we like to call them, got together to contemplate the 500 episode milestone. Here's our host, Pete A. Turner, and our co-host at large and in charge, Pete Koch.
So I'm talking with Pete Koch, and you've done a number of, gosh, it's got to be over 10 of these things with me now.
I was thinking that myself. It's about 10. I'm breaking into double digits. Feel good about that.
You do, and this is 100% real. You do a great job of the hosting thing. Like, I kind of just sit back and try to find my spots and almost do like a color thing because you're so, you ask great questions.
Well, thanks. I think it's a great team we've got here.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I think that it's interesting. I thought there's been sort of a give and take. There's some of the guests that we've worked with where they're right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I'm gonna hold off a little bit and just kind of sprinkle a little bit of seasoning on top of this. And there's other times where guys like our athletes and our actors where that I've got a little bit maybe insider information on that. I can kind of take control of that, and then you always find a way to come in with an angle and a different sort of aperture and look at an overview with these guests, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that voice that you always bring.
I always try to be mindful of the audience, where they're at mentally, and you know, with some, like both of our guests today, you know, Matt and Rudy, they're guys who take care of their bodies, and we all, you're great at this. You know, it just reminding us to constantly, you know, 28 hours of exercise a month, you always say, you know, and that's, if you're at 2, then you start working to getting up to 28, you know, it's great. 500 episodes. When I tell you that, I mean, it's an enormous body of work. What does that mean to you to be part of that?
I love numbers. And when I think of the number 500, and I've been, like you stated, part of about 10 podcasts with you, and I thank you sincerely for inviting me to be part of your Break It Down journey. And I'm very proud of that, first off. And I've probably participated in several dozen podcasts over the years, and I think that you've got a unique voice in the podcast business, and that is one that has an interesting sort of anchors at either end. I see the military, I see your passion for music and entertainment, two very different ends of the same continuum, and I think that sort of breadth of knowledge and interest that you have is of a great value to the audience.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out, and I think we should explore some more PhDs and some of these science guys that are available to us, because, yeah, the arts are great, and we'll always do that, but just grabbing people who are just hyper-focused, like we were talking about today in one of the episodes, on these parts of our body or parts of our mind or parts of society. There's just so much richness in those things,
I agree. The contrast between the topics that are subjective and objective.
Yeah.
The scientists who work and deal with numbers and math don't lie. And it gives us a chance to talk to the folks that are dealing in the part of this world in science where there isn't any lying. There's only data, and that's fun too. We,
in sort of our own way, are doing the same kind of thing, where today, like Matt talked about, the flow of bicycle riding in his BMX and how that translates and augments his acting. I would never have considered that. It wasn't even a possibility until today.
And I'm jealous of it. I think that I wished I had that skill set. I guess there's no reason to say that I couldn't acquire it, but to be to get in these these skate parks with these massive contoured bowls, and it's one thing, right, to carve through that on a skateboard. He carves these bowls on a bike. That's rad.
Yeah.
I think he would agree that that's not the only way to go about doing that, but to access that part of his brain where he feels that connectedness to carving in a skate park. That's pretty awesome. I'm gonna noodle on how I can come up with my own version of that.
I like it. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If Jay Moore is the godfather of the Break It Down show, then this is the big daddy of the show, or at least our big uncle. His contribution to our mission, our lives, and our approach is so vast and so profound as to defy measure, and we can only aspire to have his kind of style. Here's our Uncle Hilliard Guess.
We're hitting 500 episodes, and I wanted to see, you've been with us the whole time. What does it mean to you when you see our list of guests and getting to 500? What thoughts come to mind?
Tenacity is the first word that comes to mind. It's doing a podcast is really hard to do. And especially with you and John, you guys are in two different, places. So it's really, really hard to do. So tenacity is like the first thing that comes to mind. Is like, wow, like how do you survive that? I'm trying to negotiate my one show, and you guys have like 6, 7, 8 shows now. That you're doing.
That's true.
That's kind of fascinating to me, is how you survive doing that over and over and over and over and not getting tired of it.
Yeah, 4 episodes of the Break It Down show a week, several other projects that we produce shows for on the side as well. That's what I do professionally. But you get to sit across from incredible people in your field on a regular basis. I think I just get to do more of that than you have even time to do.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. For me, you still get to do what you want to do, though. You're interviewing people that you're fascinated by. Yeah. I think that's one of the things I love about your show. It seemed like when I first started listening, my nephew, Kevin Hates Hip Hop, referred me to you guys. You guys were probably more music heavy at the time, which I love. You guys would interview like interesting, guitar players, that obscure people we never heard of, but their story and who they played with was fascinating to me. So to see the growth from that to politicians, to actors, to veterans, to pilots, it's that's pivoting. It's something I'm always talking about. You got to be able to pivot.
Yeah.
To me, you guys have, because to me, I don't think there's any subject matter you guys aren't afraid to tackle. I don't think there's anybody you guys are afraid to interview. You guys have a great system, in the way you do it. And, I still find myself learning from you guys.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What's something that you've learned then? I've got to ask that question.
Well, I'm fascinated by the production that you guys have some of the time. Just as far as, I'm looking at you right now.
Yeah.
A little headset in your ear, and I'm envious of that. I want some of those damn headsets.
Yeah.
I still have the mics on the stands. With the mixing board, it's all in a big, gigantic, suitcase and stuff, it's all uncomfortable. So I kind of am not mobile because of that.
Yeah.
Where I love how you guys have kind of pivoted and adjusted your equipment like every 2 years, it's like on a whole nother level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I recorded a show on a hot tub last night.
You did not. Actually, you did, knowing you.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, it was really awesome, and I love doing it. Yeah, and I want to thank you, Hill, because you've helped us a lot too. I mean, it's game exchanging game all the time.
Yeah.
I think about pivoting. I think about thinking about my show in different perspectives, whether it's ethnically or anything else. Like, what else is out there? So I'm not just grabbing the same things that fascinate me, because everything fascinates me. So how do I make sure that my everything has a lot of different spice and flavors in it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And even myself, I'm starting to get a lot of PR reps who hit me up to have their guests on the show. So I think that's when you've crossed over to another place too. When they're coming after you. Usually it happens with, it's like the same thing, as writing a screenplay. It's like you just have to get one good one that everybody loves and they talk about. So it's the same thing with you and I with doing these podcasts, is you get one good one that everybody's talking about, and other guests in their category want to be approached, or interested in it, or their friends, hear about it, listen to it, and like, wow, dude, who else would be great to interview? This person.
Yeah.
And the cycle kind of just keeps going on. So for you guys to be at 500 is no surprise. How many years has it been? What, 4 or 5?
It's basically 5 years now at this point.
Okay, right.
And that's the podcast. That doesn't include the radio show before that too.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what do you want us to look at in the next 500? Like, where do you think we're going?
Interesting. Well, you guys have so many different shows. Are we specifically talking about the Break It Down show?
Just the Break It Down show.
Okay. Well, I mentioned about your equipment. We talked about that.
Yeah.
So we had the thing about turning it up some more for me, right?
Yeah.
Which I think you could do. I think I would like to see, like, I'm fascinated sometimes. For example, you guys had, what's his name? The actor from Sons.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Rocco. Yes.
Yeah, Rocco. Forgive me. He was actually really fascinating to me, and I'm upset that we couldn't quite make it work out. But I would have loved to have been on that episode. But there was so much good stuff in there that I gathered from that. Just like he was just like a really, I hate to say this when I'm speaking to somebody who's ethnic, and you say they're so well spoken. I hate to say that, but he was, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to be a little bit more rough around the edges, but he wasn't at all. If that makes sense. Yeah,
and I thought he had a great fearlessness because, he's seen combat. So talking to someone on a microphone about, how hard it was to show up, for the Mayans and realize, oh, shit, I'm a little behind my game here on this acting stuff.
Right.
That he didn't have to say that.
Right. And my favorite story in that, I tell you, I could talk about this shit all day, but I was fascinated by his story when he told his father that he went out for a gay character. And his father was like, what? With that machismo, Latin flair, his father couldn't believe he did it. And I was impressed with him as an actor. He was already at the place in his life where he's like, I'm an actor, though.
Yeah.
I'm just playing a role. I have to commit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I appreciated that. And it reminded me, I'll never forget, I think Will Smith years ago, I want to say he was on Oprah or one of those big shows years ago, and somebody asked him, is there anything he regrets? And he talked about he regretted 6 Degrees of Separation. Because when he did the role, I believe, and don't correct me on this, but I believe it was somebody like Denzel Washington or somebody told him he probably shouldn't take the role, and because it was a gay character, right? And so what he learned over the years was because there's a moment where he has to kiss a guy, in the movie, and it's the worst kiss ever.
Is it really?
Right? Because he's not committing to it at all. You can tell.
Yeah,
he was worried about it, right? So he said today, if he were doing it today, he put his tongue down his throat.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So in essence, he's just saying that growth is the key, and that's what I found in Rocco. He already was at the place of growth, where he's already comfortable with who he is.
Yeah.
And I think that's because he's so well traveled.
Yeah.
And he's witnessed death. You know what I mean? Nothing can touch him.
Yeah.
You know, I told you I could talk about this shit all day because it was awesome. So, yeah.
Well, I'll do my best to get you and Rocco connected. So at a minimum, you can have him in your show. And then when he comes back out, we'll get the times to work. And, man, we'll
do one, all three of us. That's fine.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate to get much more than a little help from our friends. Joining Pete are our frequent co-hosts and collaborators, Scott Husing and Phil Green.
We're about to hit 500 episodes.
500 episodes.
You've been on several as a guest, and you've done...
You don't know how many I've been on?
I know it's over
20.
Still
waiting for, like, some smoking jacket that has, like,
yeah.
a 5-episode club. Or I think I'm over 20, 30 episodes now.
Yeah, you probably are. You got to be over 20.
Which is really my honor. I mean, I've told you that before, but, like, you were the first podcast I think I ever did before the book came out with you and Mark Valley, and we did it right here. We came down, we got a good hang in, but that was the first live podcast, I will say. I think I might have done one before that. I remember I sounded like a total rookie or very robotic. I was scripted, and you just have to stay on message for all this stuff. And now we get into so many deep conversations with so many diverse guests. That's what I really enjoy about being as part of the show and bringing the different networks together from all the different people I meet in my travels and in the entertainment and the military world. It's so cool to be at 500. I mean, because I think when we first started doing this, how many episodes have you laid down since then? It's been a year and a half.
We picked up the pace in the beginning of 2018 to basically 4 a week.
Because we did 300. I did you for 300 episode. I interviewed you. So we were at 200 and something when I was on the show for the very first time. And
I'm going to say you were 284 or something.
Something like a year ago, year and a half ago?
About something like that.
About that.
So I have to disagree with you. Like when you... Not necessarily when you first appeared on the podcast, but when you first co-hosted, I immediately sent a message to Pete and said, "He's amazing. You got to get him on more. You were not robotic. You were natural."
Oh well.
So everything your questions were well thought out, and you were very articulate in how you presented and posed the questions. And so I would disagree that you were not robotic, and it was.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. At least I think in my own mind I've gotten a little bit better. And honestly, the thing that makes you better is hanging around people doing podcasts so much and doing interviews, which you've taught me. We study other people that do interviews and how to make them great, because I think the intent of doing a great show and what makes the Break It Down show so great to be able to get to 500 episodes and still do what you're doing and know that we've got a huge following and people love listening to the show. People are always coming back for great guests. Is that we keep it different. We ask different questions. We ask real questions about what's going on in your real life. You don't want to always go over the same talking points that you hear on a 7-minute interview on the news or on a radio segment. And that's what's so cool about this is we not only get those great questions, but the people we bring on, I don't think there's – you correct me on this, Pete. If there's ever been an episode where we've had a guest on and we've said, we got to get you back on the show, and they've said no.
No, that doesn't happen.
Never.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, they say that's the best interview I've done in ages, and they've had 1,000 interviews, or something akin to that where, like, We've legitimately stood up from an interview and had someone say, "I've been interviewed by everybody, and it's you and Larry King," and that's it. That's your KPI right there. You want to know you're doing well. Just if Larry King's one of your peers.
Absolutely, those are the best testimonials I think anybody could ever ask for, and. Unless Larry King's listen, he says, "Pete, you're as a good interviewer as me, if not better." Or who's our other favorite? Dan Rather.
I thought they were referring to your suspenders, but
those are nice. Yes, I wear a handsome set of braces. But yeah, so Phil, let me ask you the same question. 500 episodes. You've been on the full path. You've been a guest. You've been part of the audience. You've done album fights. You are an integral part of album fight. You are the official announcer. So. What do you have to say about 500?
It's amazing, and the opportunity for me to even just cut my teeth on the Break It Down show and learn how to ask questions and interact with people has allowed me to
I think I have seven episodes recorded for my IMALS podcast, and I'm working on editing the framework of what that show is going to be, and then I'll be able to start publishing them once a week. But just being able to participate in the Break It Down show, get to learn from you and how to ask appropriate questions and not say or 100,000 times during the interview, and have the people that I'm bringing on the show, on my show or your show, learn how to ask questions that they don't normally get asked, and have them go, wow, that's a really great question. Like when we sat down with Anson Mount, after the interview, he was like, wow, you guys asked some really good questions, and made him think. And we weren't following that normal script that people would always just ask him, and he had his slated PR generated answers to give us. And so I've been able to take that, learn from you and my time on this show. And, I think I've probably only been on, if we count album fights, I've probably been on 7
Shit,
episodes.
if you count album fights, how about like 70?
Well, not counting my intros.
Oh, okay.
So where I've been a vocal speaking participant.
About 7 for sure.
Then it's allowed me, so when I sit down with one of the top stem cell researchers for my podcast, and he looks at me and goes, wow, that's a really good question. This guy's been studying ALS for 20 some years, and he looks at me and said, wow, that's a really great question. No one's asked me that. I can attribute that to learning how to be in this environment and my time on the Break It Down show.
Yeah, that's a huge compliment, man. I really appreciate that we were a platform for that. What, do you have a similar thing at all that you were able to draw out from doing these? Obviously, you've become a better interviewer and likely a better guest.
That's a good question. That's Dan rather-esque.
What have you learned?
Regrets.
Yes.
No regrets from.
How many times in the 500 episodes has someone, or 499 episodes, has somebody said, that's a really good question?
Hundreds of times.
Yeah, that could be equivalent to the unreal. If you were to pull out all the time someone said, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. That's a really good question. So I think what's cool about the show too is you do get people to think. I mean, if you can stop someone dead in their tracks, especially a motor mouth like me, who always seems to have something to say, and it's not always just jargon thrown out or military acronyms and hyperbole and buzzwords, but to really scrape beneath the surface and pin someone up against the wall and not necessarily make them feel uncomfortable, but to really make them stop and think before they answer the question. Because if you ask me a question about writing or about the military and the Marine Corps or this, that, and the other, and I can spit it out right away, obviously there's no real deep thought. So when you ask me the question, what does it mean to me to be on the Break It Down show as it nears 500, I think that is such a significant milestone. 500 episodes. To put that in perspective from an academic or an instructor standpoint is that every time you stand in front of a group and speak or present material for 1 hour, there's usually about 3 hours of preparation that goes into that. So if you just do the math on that, and I never do math in public, but it's a simple 1 to 3, 3-to-1 ratio, that you're preparing for the interviews, you're driving out of your way, out of your pocket, out of your family's time, your time, to go catch all these great episodes. And then we always lay down a track that's like at least 90 minutes, and then you sift through the mess and you come up with the best things to edit into the show so that people are engaged. They want to tune in and listen. They listen throughout the entire show, and then they come back, because that's the beauty of the Break It Down show. You always know you're going to get great guests coming back, and there are always people from so many different walks of life that provide such amazing content. When I listen to the Stallone interview, I'm thinking like, God, I never even knew this guy did this. Yeah. And Pete will call me up and you say, hey, did you check out this episode? I'm like, no, I did not even know that episode existed. I should know these things because it pops up on my app for the Break It Down show on my podcast, and I always get notifications. And when I tune in, I hear those Frank Stallone interviews, for example. Frank, amazing interview, by the way. Those are the things that keep me engaged and want to not only call other people up and say, hey, have you done the Break It Down show? If you haven't been on the Break It Down show, you're no one. Like, Pete walks in the house, he goes, hey, I got all these amazing authors lined up, and he mentions a name, and he goes, yeah, but he didn't get back to me to confirm. I go, he's a hack. Like, not a writer, not an author. If you have not been on the Break It Down show, you're dead to me. So I think that the next 500 episodes, I can only imagine, Pete, where this show is going to be. And when we are getting ready to lay down 1,000 episodes, I hope I'm there for you, brother. You're doing amazing work, providing great stories, and that's what it's all about, man. It's all love and connecting people and sharing these stories, and I'm just proud to be a part of it, man.
Yeah, it is neat to be able to do that, and I love being able to do it with you guys, so thank you so much for coming on the episode 500 breakdown, and let's see what the next one is.
The godfather of the Break It Down show, here's our dear friend, Jay Moore.
So it was like a very special episode. 500 is a lot. That's a monumental. That's a bunch of years under your belt, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of time.
You guys are once a week, right?
No, we're doing 3 to 4 a week now.
How do you get that many guests?
No, I just fucking work it.
It doesn't seem like it's been 500 episodes. I remember when you guys were like this little mom and pop store.
Yeah.
And you've gotten like fascinating guests. I made friends.
Yeah.
With some like good, Scott Husing, I know through you, and James, I know through you and stuff. And how do you have 500 shows?
I realized a while back that we had to do more per week to stand out. Like, because you do one a week, but you already have an audience. We're still in audience building mode. So if it takes 150 shows to get this many people, then I wanted to get to 150, to 250, to 500. And
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What if you were told this is the maximum audience you'll ever have?
Yeah.
How would you approach your podcast?
I don't know that I would change a thing, because the people that I listen to the show are me. They get what I get, and they're curious about what I'm curious about. And I can't say no to shows for the most part. There's times now where I have to, but for the most part, I just I want to learn about this. I want to understand this. Let me get an expert. This person wrote a book. You liked it. Let's find them.
Yeah. You have like the most straightforward approach, and what impresses me is the fact that you get the guests that you do. Like, was it episode 100 with Sly from Sly and the Family Stone?
Yeah.
Sly Stone?
Yeah.
And when you told me you had Sly Stone, I'm like, oh, cool. And I was doing the radio show, and I pulled into the parking garage that day, and I remember thinking to myself, how on earth do you get an Jupiter and Martian maniac like Sly? How do you get him into a room?
Yeah.
How do you get him out of a room? Which is probably a lot harder than getting him into a room. Like, okay, you have to go, Sly.
Yeah.
My kids are coming home, and I have to feed them. All right, man. So you just get great guests, and that's just you and Johnny hustling.
Yeah, I mean, I ask. That's the first thing. And then I've gotten better and better at asking. And then also, like Pete Koch has friends. And I'm like, well, then come on. You want to have a podcast? You want to talk to people? Let's go. And so he'll bring Frank Stallone or whatever it is, or whatever. So I'm asking, other people are asking, and I just keep hammering away at it.
I like that you wouldn't change the approach, because I've thought about this myself, like with More Stories podcast. If let's say my listeners, it's done. Mm-hmm. Like that's like Twitter. I have the same Twitter followers as I had when I got into my radio show. It's like 330,000. It's been that way for like 6 years.
Right.
Apparently that's full.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to use Twitter as an example, because social media doesn't count in the real world. So if you have like the amount of listeners you have and it's never going to increase, you got to take the people that you have and you got to move them. Mm-hmm. And how do you move them? You move them by getting into those deep conversations. You got to get into the weeds, man.
Yeah.
You got to cut deep. And you do cut deep. Like that's why you and Johnny are so good together.
Yeah, we get to really great places. The other thing too is I don't look at them as an audience. They're my friends. And I talk to a lot of these people, as many as I can, on a regular basis.
That's what I did with the radio show, and I don't do it as much with the podcast as I used to, because I used to just sit in like a hotel room in Vegas when I was on the road someplace, or and I would spend 3 hours just answering every email, because that's what Dane Cook was doing.
Yeah,
and it works. Dane was the tip of the spear. Like, oh, you could actually respond. Yeah, but I'm so behind on my emails because I got another Coach JJ37 at Gmail. for life coaching, and so that gets a lot of my attention because it's a service that they pay for. So, but people have like shared profound things with me, like how if someone's listening to the Break It Down show, they're listening when they choose to listen to it. It's their tiny fragment of time on their way to their job, in their car, in their seat, to coffees the way they like it, in their cup holder. You are a complete invited guest. It's appointment listening. And that's why I love podcasts.
Yeah.
That's why I love your podcast. Episode 500. I've listened to like 16 of those, man.
That's awesome.
I've listened to more than that. I've listened to probably 30. I can't keep like your actual output. Like I can't listen to every Corolla. If I could listen to every Corolla, I would have to drive 2.5 hours every day to go to and from work.
Right.
I got a kid.
Yeah.
If I get my son to listen to you guys and Corolla, or like Greg Proops is or like Rogan's 4 hours sometimes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know how he keeps that audience that long. But I mean, you know what? I'll say this about Rogan. I've never, ever heard it be boring.
Yeah, he's great.
In a decade, I've never listened and went, whatever.
He's gotten significantly better in the last 5 years.
He's like Howard Stern.
He's really elevated his game. And he gets into deep topics, and he's picked up enough knowledge along the way that he's comfortable in any conversation. And he adds an incredible...
He asks good questions. So you ask really good questions.
Well, thanks. I try.
And when I asked, you know what I liked about you when you first came on More Stories? That was probably about 4 years ago.
About that, yeah.
You and I are polar opposites philosophically. And you explained to me why, and your explanation just didn't hold water for me.
Yeah.
It was about us being in other places on the globe.
Yeah.
Like we are the problem. My thing was we are the problem. If we leave, they won't shoot at us there. They don't want us there. Like if somebody from Germany is standing across the street with a rifle, I'm going to get some buddies. We're going to crack some heads.
Yeah.
Like Wolverine. And you're like, no, because it's too big a discussion. But like, no, because then when you leave, this happens, this happens, this. I'm like, yeah, but we still went over into somebody else's yard. And you're like, you held your line. And we had that was one of the first conversations in podcasting where me and the guest completely disagreed with each other. And it was a really great conversation. It wasn't like Christian versus atheist where it's like, you're right, I'm wrong. No, you're right, I'm wrong. Or I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, there has to be space for both people to be right, because I've experienced multiple truths throughout my entire spying career. I have to accept that someone else's reality is their reality. That's the whole infrastructure of the mind stuff.
Oh, man, you said something that blew my mind. You go and you move somebody's furniture around in their house.
Yeah.
You remember telling me that?
Yeah. That's the whole infrastructure of the mind. You got to know how that works for them. And you don't just get to change their uncle's influence on them because you fucking showed up.
Right. There's something else you shared with me. Oh, what's that thing? A guy standing on the beach in Malibu. What was it? A guy standing on the beach in Malibu watching the sun. A guy standing on the beach in Long Island watching the sun go down. A guy standing on the beach in Hawaii watching the sun come up. Or in Japan watching the sun come up. A guy's on the moon. He doesn't see the sun at all. All three guys are right.
Yeah.
That was like,
No, that's
do I have that right?
Yeah. And then, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a movie called Mosul. It's about the ISIS losing to an Iraqi conglomerate of troops, taking Mosul back. And so when we leave a place like Iraq, you've got to be able to watch ISIS people walk in a line, shooting people in the head, and go, yeah, I'm cool with that.
You know, message received, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not glossing over that.
Yeah.
Whenever I have a problem with, it's not, what do you call it when you go and it's when we go into other places, it's occupying really in a way.
Yeah. I mean, we call it an expedition, a force of hope. Operation Enduring Freedom.
We're terrible at naming things. Like Gold to my ear. Like Israel always names stuff the best. Like Operation Wrath of God.
Yeah.
And she said, "Bring me the boys to get the Mossad." Like that's her actual quote.
Oh, yeah.
Bring me the boys.
Well, then they're great at naming their agencies too, though, because they don't call them the Mossad. They're like, "This is the Office of Alternative Operations." You're like, "What does that mean?" That just means that's where we kill.
So when I ask you, "What do you do for a living?" You go, "I fill gaps."
Yeah, well, that's true.
I work in kinetic space. So the thing with whenever I have a problem with it, like you said, like watching, Pete people kill other people. I'm like, it's not our business. Man, that fucking JFK inauguration speech. Now it's time to pick up the torch for freedom. And I'm like, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Let's stop being cruel to each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, JFK got me. Stupid JFK.
Stupid JFK.
Too soon. Era. Well, congratulations on 500 shows, Playboy.
Thanks, man.
500 more?
Oh, for sure. Let's do it.
500,000 more?
Okay.
500 million? Easy.
How about one day at a time, Coach?
One day at a time. That's it. Just do next.
Perfect. Thank you.
One of my favorite friendships that was born of the show. Here's the professor of production, the master of the mix, the authority of the album fight, our partner across the pond, the Wesinator, Wes Maybe.
Wes, this is such a neat thing to be able to do. I really appreciate you coming on the show and celebrating 500 with us. It's neat to know that like Kat Connor did one of these with me. She's in New Zealand and you're in England and recording with me, and there's everybody in between. It's just neat to know that our show is a multi-continental show, and being able to call you a friend through our relationship that we have now with NAMM. It's just, man, it really makes me thankful and appreciate what we've had from the show and what 500 shows has given us. You know, outside of everything else, I have a friend like you, and it really is neat. When I say 500 to you, I mean, you're a producer, you're an engineer, you know, you see bands that have big bodies of work. When I say 500 episode, what comes to mind?
Oh, well, I think that it's an amazing body of work, and it's, you know, it's obviously not just people who are relevant in my industry. I mean, the versatility of the people that you guys have talked to is quite amazing, with some seriously, you know, heart-wrenching stories. So it's really cool, and I had no idea it was going to hit 500 until you told me. So congratulations on that.
When you compare an album to something like 500 episodes, I mean, you've been with UB40 when they just recorded their most recent album. They've got a massive body of work. Erasure has over 15 albums. Shocked the heck out of me. How does that compare and contrast to something like a podcast?
I think it's a different animal though, because, you know, yes, as an artist, you know, your first album sort of, you pour in your entire childhood and your youth and growing up and all those heartaches and heartbreaks and joyful moments and stuff, and then second album comes along and it's like, oh shit, where am I going to get material from? It's only about a year ago. I think the podcasting thing is I would put it on par with the whole social media thing. Was, you know, you don't post something for a day, people go, oh, what, you're gone now, that's it. So I think with that, you guys, there's a lot of pressure on you guys to come up with new content and fresh content all the time. I mean, your brain must be in overdrive constantly. It's like, oh, who can I talk to next? So I think, you know, in that way, it's very different. But yeah, there are some parallels, but it's definitely a lot more time sensitive. I think big artists can probably afford to not release something for a while, but then young artists these days I kind of think that they're put into the sort of podcast world because, you know, if you don't release something, people just forget. You know, people's attention spans have dwindled severely with the whole social media thing. So if they don't get spoon-fed things, they just forget about you. So I think that's why younger artists are releasing, you know, more single by single rather than making everybody wait for a whole album. And I think the podcast thing is pretty similar in that respect.
I'm always finding ways to improve how I host, how I ask questions, looking for perfect questions, playing with silence, all these things. I'm trying to grow all the time as an interviewer, gain new perspective, find ways to see new perspectives, all of these things. Can bands do the same thing? Do bands look to grow like that? And I guess I'd also ask, like, do they have to stay close to home because that's where the money is in playing songs that are hits, that sound like they're hits? How much can they play with that?
Yeah, well, I think Well, there are only so many notes that we can rely on in Western music, anyway. So we're always going to come across something that is maybe similar or the same. Or I mean, we're all inspired by what's gone before, obviously. So you can always hear an influence on something. And well, I guess I can get on my high horse here, but I think the music industry has kind of lost the ability and the guts to take risks. It's like everything has to sound the same now. If you don't sound like what was hip last week, they're not interested. Everything is sort of, the whole Lego thing, it's like everything's the same, everything's the same format. And I always think, God help us, if Pink Floyd or the Pistols came along today, they wouldn't stand a chance. Nobody would take the risk. And then what you were saying about, you growing as an interviewer and pulling different things out of people, that's kind of the role of the producer. The record producer has to do that. He or she has to take the artist to another level and maybe take them to places that they had never thought of or didn't think they were comfortable with. And when they manage to do that, you come up with exciting stuff and hopefully the audience will kind of dig it and go, oh, this is cool. It's slightly different. Very nice. Nicely done.
What about the next 500, Wes? What do you want to hear from us?
Oh my God. Well, I definitely like to see the album fights continue. I think that's always fun, and it's a great avenue to introduce people to music, me included, that they would have otherwise never listened to. We've talked about albums that were definitely not on my radar. I knew they existed, but they were just not in the library. And sitting through those albums song by song, which in itself is a genius thing. You're not comparing an album with an album, you're comparing a song by a song, is really cool, and it really makes you think, and it really makes you listen out. So definitely keep that on the go. I don't know. I think I think personally, as an engineer and as a producer, I think it would be cool to have a little series where Break It Down talks to the manufacturers of legendary stuff. Certain microphones, certain mixing consoles, guitar pedals, guitars, mic pre's, compressors, all that stuff, loudspeakers. So you get a feel for the people who are behind the equipment that make all that music that we love. I think that would be cool.
No, you're absolutely right. Some kind of tech award-based show where we feature the giants, the innovators, even the small people that do just the simple things. I think that stuff is fascinating, just to understand all of the thought and the development that goes into that stuff. It's a great idea.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there are some straight out of the box contenders, but there's definitely room and scope to get hold of some of the weirder ones, some of the stuff that's maybe not as well known, and use the Break It Down show to like the album fights, to make people aware of stuff that's there that maybe otherwise they wouldn't know about.
Okay, so let's do it. You and I will co-produce it. We'll build a whole new show. And I'll help you get it going, and we'll record these things. You figure out what we want to do and who we want to talk to. We'll go from there.
Fab. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you, Wes, for coming on and doing this with John and I and everybody else who co-hosts. It's just such a neat thing to be able to do. And it just means the world to me to know that you're out there and that we get to support one another and celebrate one another. And hopefully I get to see you soon. And hopefully it's somewhere in Europe, maybe in a pub in London.
An absolute pleasure as always.